Welcome to In the Envelope, a podcast from Backstage, the #1 resource for actors and talent seekers. I am your host, Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage, and I'm here to guide you through every aspect of the entertainment industry with the help of some of your favorite stars. These intimate, inspirational conversations with today's most award-worthy film, television, and theater artists provide you, dear listener, advice on how to live the creative life, personal stories of success and failure alike, and maybe, just maybe, a tantalizing glimpse in the envelope.
Doesn't matter where you're from, what your background is, how I've come upon you. If you're good, if you're right, if the audition was good, you get the opportunity.
Elyse Roth, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? What's going on in your life?
Well,
Senior Editor Elyse Roth. Is that your title?
Yeah, that's my title.
Lovely.
I think probably like a lot of people, I'm spending a lot of time at home, a lot of time in front of the computer. So there's not too much new, but I'm glad
probably
at
too
least
much screen time.
There's a lot of screen time. I'm trying to break up the screen time with some walks in the neighborhood, but
same.
It has been a very productive few months for watching TV.
Speaking about the topic of today's podcast episode, speaking to that, you have watched, I assume, The Handmaid's Tale, Dead to Me, and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
I have.
And the other reason, I mean, obviously, for listeners who don't know, Elyse, thank you for booking me the interviews in today's podcast, first of all.
You're very welcome.
Because the stars of today's episode, the guests in today's episode, are the Emmy-nominated casting directors of Dead to Me, The Handmaid's Tale, and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And Elyse, you know them, or you have spoken to them at least once, maybe several times?
Yes, I've spoken to... Well, should I go ahead and name them?
Go for it.
I've spoken to Cindy Tolan before. She was in the throes of casting Steven Spielberg's West Side Story at the time.
Amazing.
So we had a great conversation a couple of years ago. And I spoke with Sharon, Bialy, and Bialy Thomas last year after they had cast The Act. And they recently appeared, well, Bialy Thomas and another one of their casting directors at Bialy Thomas, Russell Scott, appeared on the slate to talk about their work on Dead to Me. But then they also, they have so much TV work that they also talked about other projects they do, including Handmaid's Tale and also The Walking Dead and Breaking Bad. And
Breaking Bad.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with both of these casting directors.
I could have talked for hours. They have so many fascinating things to say, so much advice to offer actors.
Yes, and their job is kind of interesting because if you're I guess directors on TV shows kind of jump around, but if you work in lighting, if you're a writer, if you're a showrunner, you're working, your whole life is a show. And if you're a casting director, you can be casting a bunch of shows at once. And once the show ends, you can just cast all the time. And these people do. So they're constantly seeing actors. They're constantly watching things. They're constantly seeing auditions. And they have been doing this in many cases that, like we're talking about, for decades. And when you have several people in your office that are all doing this at all times, these people are talking about actors for more hours of their lives than they're not.
Completely. Like, it boggles my mind the amount of submissions they get for any number of roles for something like Maisel, for example, but also like how much TV they must watch and theater and film and even comedy. And they go to showcases and they keep up with actors at every level in every area. They have to. But from the casting director's perspective, they really are testing out actors and getting a feel for them and getting to know them better, because down the line, there's going to be a part that is perfect for them.
Right. That's why they say to book the room. Book the room, because statistically the role is not what you're going to be getting. If you're very lucky, you will book the role, or you'll get a call back for the role.
Yeah.
And when you go into a room and you show that you've done the work and you've prepared and you've made a choice, and so depending on what the role is, you take a risk, even if you're not right, even if even if you are right, but you're 5'10" and you're going to be acting opposite someone who's 5'6", and and you're supposed to be shorter, so you can't get the role, even if your performance was great. You doing a good job in the room is going to keep you on their list and going to keep you in mind. And that's the interesting thing, because casting directors, people don't talk to them that often, and they always have their head down. They're always doing work. And it's funny because when sometimes actors will, quote, come out of nowhere, but for casting directors, it's almost never that situation. Sometimes someone could be new on the scene and come out of nowhere, but for the most part, these casting directors have been seeing these people in auditions for years, and finally they find the right role for the person, or finally the person has grown as an actor or as a performer enough that it's finally their time to have a lead role. That means that these actors do stay on their radar.
Yeah, there's the root of that relationship. It is about staying on the radar. And I believe all three of these interviews, these casting directors really make the point that they explain what they do, but then they also kind of make the point of we are doing what we do. You can have faith in us that we are doing the research and we are keeping you on our radar. And if you're doing great work, we will see it. And as you're saying, they will get called in down the line, or they will see that you've grown. I mean, that's what's so cool about creating relationships with casting directors. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily sending them a bouquet of flowers after you get an audition with them. It can be really just continuously showing up when you're invited to audition and doing a good job, and having faith that if they're inviting you in, there's a chance that you could get this role, and that if they continue to invite you in, then there's a reason they want to keep seeing you. They're not just doing it for fun. It's your time. It's their time. They're not going to be just doing it because they want to give it a try. There's something about you as an actor that they want to continue to see. Just have the confidence, stick with it. And if you keep putting out good work and showing that you're working hard, then the casting director is going to respond to that.
And it's also just cool to bring it back to these three interviewees, Maisel, Dead to Me, and Handmaids. Those are three of the most amazing prestige shows out there. So actors listening to this, to hear the perspective of these specific casting directors, I think is going to be really valuable. And again, maybe you'll end up auditioning for them and creating that relationship with them where they're keeping tabs on you.
I think that the selection of the Bialy Thomas team and Cindy Tolan, it's a good New York LA split, and they both are great examples because they've both done film and TV, and they've both done comedy and drama, which show you, if you get in front of a casting director like that, their projects are so wide ranging that if you have a great audition or if you just have a good showing, then that's such an advantage for you as an actor, because these people, Cindy Tolan cast for Tina Fey, in addition to obviously Steven Spielberg, and for Maisel, and it's okay, well,
that's a wide range.
Yeah, and then like I just talked about before, Bialy Thomas, they have done everything from Breaking Bad to Dead to Me and Barry, and Handmaid's Tale obviously is a completely different tone, and it's just that's all over the place in a good way. And it's as an actor, that nothing could be better than getting in front of someone who has their hands in so many different types of projects.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just keeps coming back to be it self-tape or in person or whatever, the casting directors, they want to see the best work. They are seeing the best work. And so actors, that's what you got to really focus on, is whatever the medium is, just put your best foot forward, because that is that future investment into a future role that we're talking about, for sure.
Right. And especially if you don't really have a lot of work to show a casting director, professional work, casting directors want to be able to find you. So especially while we're all at home and there's not that much going on, and even actors that are on professional projects, a lot of them aren't really doing much right now. If there's all these videos going around, there's all these new like easy video platforms that are super shareable. Make your own content, practice being on camera for that time you do get a call to do a self-tape. It's, there's never been a better time to kind of just mess around with what your phone has to offer and flex the acting muscles and do some kind of performing, even if no one's ever going to see it, even if you're not going to post it. But if you do post it, that makes you discoverable for casting directors and their assistants and their associates who are always browsing and always have their eyes open for new talent.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's really, really good to hear. Listeners, go check out Elyse's writing on Backstage.com. We will share a link to, for all of those features that you mentioned, but also just the In the Room series. Yeah. I can link to In the Room. And let's go hear it. Any parting words?
Just thank you for having me on to chat about it. You know that I'm always here to talk up the work of casting directors, and I'm excited to hear you talk to one instead of just hearing me talk to one.
And in the podcast medium too.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear where this conversation took you.
Totally. We'll hear from Cindy Tolan first, and then we're taking a break between these interviews. The second interview is a joint interview between Sharon and Sherry, and you should be able to differentiate between the two. So thank you, Elyse. And let's take a quick break and get to it.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by HBO's hit sci-fi drama Westworld, the third season of which explores questions about the nature of our reality. Hailed by Decider as a technical masterpiece and currently nominated for 11 Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series for Jeffrey Wright and Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Drama Series for Thandie Newton, consider HBO's Westworld. Cindy Tolan is the winner of 5 Artios Awards and a Primetime Emmy for her work in casting. Her career spans New York theater, TV, and film, from Avenue Q and The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, to Flight of the Conchords and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, to Straight Outta Compton, If Beale Street Could Talk, and the forthcoming West Side Story film. Cindy is currently Emmy-nominated again for Amy Sherman Palladino's The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Season 3. Here's our deep dive with casting director Cindy Tolan. Start us off by letting listeners know, what is it that you do? What is your job title and what does that entail?
Oh, such always a difficult question, but always a good one that I never have a ready answer. So we'll just see. But I'm a casting director for film, television, and theater occasionally.
Yes.
And the way that I see it is as I do see it as an artist, as part of the art making of the mediums, just like a production designer, a lighting designer, costume designer, that we fulfill the vision of the creators and the directors and the showrunners. And if this is specifically about Maisel, then that is, I am there to fulfill the vision of Amy Sherman Palladino and Dan Palladino through casting. And that means casting actors for the parts that they've written to fulfill their storytelling vision.
Which we love. I mean, that's exactly what I feel like Backstage is all about, is highlighting how to fulfill that vision and treating casting like the art form that it is.
Well, there's this great documentary that's out called Casting By. And it is about the art form of casting and the history of it and how it happened. And it starts to span from Marion Dougherty, who is really an amazing artist, all the way up till today. And if anybody is interested, I really highly recommend it, because it is an art form, and it starts to peel away and explain and show and illustrate how that is, because I find that people really have a hard time making that jump and the connection of, well, but it's people. So how is that art? You know, I can understand if it's a costume. I can understand if it's a light. I can understand if it's sound, kind of, you know. Yeah. But I can't understand casting. And I'm just that it is fulfilling the vision by helping them tell their stories. Wonderful. That's such a perfect, that's what a perfect way to kick off like this deep dive into casting that I want to get at. So this is perfect. Great. I would love to hear, take me back to the beginning. How did you get involved in this area? For me, with regards to casting, this was a long time ago. And so it wasn't really seen as a profession when I got involved in it. But I feel like that has changed now. I feel that people do know that it's a profession. And I think that the visibility, and I think that people are starting to understand that, oh, no, actually, that is something I can aspire to be, and know that it's a profession and know that it's an art form, and choose that that's the craft I want. But back when I was starting, it wasn't really like that. And everything back then about casting was you fell into it. And so I knew I wanted to do art in some way, and I didn't know in what capacity. So I tried everything. I tried directing, and then I tried writing. I never tried acting. That's the one thing I never tried. I knew I didn't have it. I knew I didn't have the courage. I knew I wasn't brave. I knew I didn't have the talent, and I was just always in awe of the people who did. So I just never even wanted to dip a toe into that world. But I also was, organized. And so, so eventually I figured out that I wanted to be a dramaturg. Oh, cool. Okay. But then I realized, and then that's where the business part of me came in. It was just like, well, is there really a place for dramaturgs in all the art forms that you're interested in? Because I was also very interested in film. I always was interested in film for me as the ultimate. But then, of course, life happens and art changes and everything changes. So back then it was all about film for me. And really, it was about vicinity, because I grew up on Long Island. And so New York was always closer to me. New York City was closer to me than Los Angeles. So I just thought, well, my way in is through theater, to then bridge to film, because at that time, the only way you could cross over into film and theater was through casting and not anything else. Now it's all so easy, but we're talking about 25 or 30 years ago, and there wasn't the crossover. It wasn't as easy to go over those lines, but for casting, you could. And also in Hollywood at that time, I would say that theater, you looked at casting directors on the East Coast in New York with theater, and they were just like, oh, that's substantial. They must be good. Okay. There was the uber East Coast, New York theater scene was a big deal and gave you cachet or established you as just like, oh, they must know what they're doing. They must have an inside scoop or inside track on art or talent or that pool anyway. And so I fell into casting that way. And so back then I had 2 part-time jobs. I worked for Wendy Wasserstein as her personal assistant, and No way. Yeah, sure. Yep. For years, yeah. Okay, that's so cool. Dear friend, and so just amazing. Just an amazing experience. And I was also working with Rebecca Miller, who is this incredible filmmaker. Yes. And so I had both of these jobs. And with Rebecca, I was working really like as a dramaturg on her movie scripts. And we became friends too. And so with my background with both of them, it led me into casting because a job became available at Lincoln Center Theater in the casting department. I progressed into associate at Lincoln Center, and I was there for a couple of years. Then went to the public for a brief period as a third casting director with Heidi and Jordan under George Wolfe and Rosemary Tischler. That phased out because they woke up and they were like, we only need 2. Oh. And then I went and did the Vineyard Theater casting stuff. I was casting director for the Vineyard Theater while I was Doug Abel's film associate. And then there, I did the second Rebecca Miller film that then just culminated in a huge success at Sundance. Then I got a John Sayles independent film, and Avenue Q was moving from the Vineyard to Broadway. So it was this huge culmination where I'm like, maybe I'll just start my own shingle. And then I just started casting on my own.
I was going to ask you about that because I knew that all of these things were happening at the same time, but first of all, in the art of casting, you're saying that back then it was like casting was the one way to transfer from one to the other. Is that just because in terms of the art of casting, it's the most similar between the two mediums?
No, I think that the link is the actor. I think that's the link, right? So that, if you look back then, it was Law and Order SVU, and every single New York actor was on Law and Order SVU, right? And that was the one show that we had, but you could always see that. And I think slowly, it's not like today, but slowly they were like, oh, there's this incredible pool of talent in New York that we're not really, really pursuing and using. And so then Hollywood was just like, there's this whole other area, an arena of talent that we can be exploring. And so film and, for TV specifically, would then hire a New York casting person to fill out the LA portion.
And is there a difference for you, speaking of from the actor's perspective, an actor listening to this might want to know, auditioning for you, is there a difference between film and TV in the sense of are you detecting that certain actors are a better fit for one or the other? Or can any actor do both in your mind?
I think ultimately everyone can do everything. It's just, it takes time sometimes to adjust to the mediums, so that frankly, I have to say, it's all difficult. So actors are amazing. It's all difficult. Theater is so hard. Theater is so hard. In all ways, it's so hard. It's so worthy and it's so worthwhile, but it's all so difficult because of the stamina that you need. Yes. And if you look at musicals, that is even off the charts. That is just crazy. 8 times, the dancing, the singing, and the acting, 8 times a week. You're just like, it's awe-inspiring to think about it. And so also you have to remember that when you do film and TV, there is a camera. And the camera is a whole other animal. And sometimes, if you can act in front of a camera, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can do it on stage and vice versa. And so I think it's just about adjusting and adapting to each specific medium that you're working in.
Mm-hmm. And for the most part, like an actor who is new to film work, for example, you cast them in a film. I mean, eventually they'll get used to it, right? There's an adjustment period, and then
Totally. I mean, for example, it's just it's really an amazing thing, like with Amy Sherman-Palladino or anybody who, who hires people who have never done a TV show before for the first time and do Maisel. She does it. And also that is amazing because, It's that, they won't know the blocking. They won't know how to start, unless they hear action. Sometimes the action is drowned out and then they don't know how to start.
Right.
And then you just go and you can ruin a whole take for the entire cast because you didn't hear the AD go action,
Yes.
And same with theater. If a film and TV actor has never done theater before, how do they know when to start the scene if they don't hear action? Because we don't do action in theater.
Right.
Just a little minutia,
It is. And it's like, it's just important to get experience in all areas. And how awesome that I just love that dramaturgy was maybe the main drive there, but for you, your inspirations and your direction were never acting, but always like the kind of realms around acting.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like casting like really called your name in a way.
Yeah. Oh, I love reading the script. I love figuring out what the vision is after reading the script through conversation with the creator, the filmmaker, the show creator, and then they flush out what it is. And then you're like, oh my God, that makes so much. It's like such a high,
you're solving a puzzle.
Yeah. And to talk through the script and to talk through what they're thinking of, dramaturgically, what their themes are, why they're there, when you start to talk about race, when that comes in, when it doesn't, all these things, disability, when that doesn't, it's like, does it reflect the world that we're living in today? And if not, can I introduce that to a new creative person and say,
Gotcha.
Well, have you thought of this person for this role? And they're like, well, how would that work? I'm like, what do you mean, how would that work? You just do it. You're the creator of the show. Do it. Make it work.
That's so cool, too. Like, sometimes your job is to help creators think outside the box.
Totally.
That's awesome.
I mean, the world is doing that for us now, but back when we started, it was just the public doing it, and that was non-traditional casting. That wasn't like conscious casting.
Casting as an experimental, like, let's take it in a new direction.
Yeah, now it's...
You mentioned race.
Yeah, well, now it's specific that now if you do something, you need to be conscious about what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can I ask, what is a day about the day-to-day? Like, what does a typical day look like? And also, I mean, we have to address what has changed since the pandemic. What does a day look like for you now as opposed to then?
Well, I think it's interesting now in a pandemic. It's that it's the same yet it's vastly different, right? So right now we're currently working on everything is now in pre-production. Anything that I'm not working on, anything that's in production. And The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is working on when it's going back into production. But I'm putting together, casts for 2 TV shows. And what that means is everybody is auditioning. All actors are auditioning on tape. Which is really difficult and really hard for the actor because suddenly they're like a film director, a cinematographer, a lighting designer, and all of that. Yeah. But I think that, really, I think for the actors to know that none of that really matters as much as just what they're doing. That the world has changed so rapidly and radically that I don't, the aesthetics of what you're shooting, how you're shooting. Okay. It's okay to send in your self-tape and not to freak out about it and not to be like, I have to go out and buy $1,000 worth of equipment because as an actor, it shouldn't cost you any money to audition.
No, ideally, yeah, totally.
Do you know what I mean? It shouldn't. And that's always been the thing. It's like trying to get a job and trying to do your art is hard enough, and then you suddenly don't have to like have a second job, spend your hard-earned money on like an Alexis camera that's, $10,000. Yeah. And also everyone who is good is able to see the audition and without all the bells and whistles. And so that's number one. And so everything is done from home. But it's the same in that everybody auditions, everybody watches the audition. If there's an adjustment to be made, then we can, send a note via the agent to make an adjustment and ask them to retape. Wow. And then the creatives see it. And then it's the same process. It's now just on video. And we'll see if that changes the process, and if people get used to this now, and if this becomes the new normal, as everyone says, or if this is just, the world is happening and we organically will just need to go with the world and how it's evolving.
The world is happening. Yes.
It is.
Yes.
The world is happening.
That's such a good way of putting
it. It's a safe way of saying it all.
Right. So, and before this, there were self-tapes, of course, but mostly it's about being in the room.
Well, again, it was changing so rapidly. Like when I was casting, the film of West Side Story, I did audition. 30,000 people plus auditioned. A lot was in person, but most of it was on tape until the very final round. Yeah. And that's when then people were in person. But so every single videotape, every single audition tape was viewed, and that was like 30,000 plus, And so if you're good at your job, you're good at your job, and everybody is seen. And if you're not good at your job, then, I can't attest to what other people do, but anytime an actor auditions for me, however they audition, I see it, we see it. Gotcha. It's not wasted. And we remember everybody for the next job we're working on. So, my perfect example is David Alvarez in West Side Story, and he got the role of Bernardo. And we remembered seeing David Alvarez as 10 years old and Billy Elliot and winning a Tony. Cool. And he gets that part. And so an audition is never wasted.
That's always good to hear. And we've heard that from actors too, that really an audition is an investment in a future role. Maybe even statistically, like.
Absolutely. I also think an audition is a way of, being able to do your art, even if it's for 10 minutes. Yeah, like you're able to come in, and rather than look at it as getting the job, I know it's easy for me to say this, but rather than looking at it as a way of getting a job, it's a way for those 10 minutes to collaborate and do the art. Whatever material you're working on, you're able to artistically express yourself.
And we've heard it on this podcast before, the advice of treat it like you have the job, like you've already earned the role, and really own it in that way. Like, is that sort of how you think of it? Like, pretend that you have the job and that, like you say, collaborate with the people in the room in that moment.
I just think I have two things. I just think trust yourself fully. Just trust yourself fully. There's so much about the business. You cannot control anything that has to do with the business. It's show business, right? You can't control it. And so what I always find is that actors were like, shoot, I didn't do my best job. It was so much better when I did it at home. Yeah. If I had just 5 minutes, if I could have I'm like, throw all of that out. When you walk out, you can't, as an actor, do it all and be it all and turn yourself into a pretzel and get the part. All of it is out of your control. The only thing that you can do is to come in and just enjoy the fact that you have the opportunity to work on this material, whatever it is.
That fully answered. I mean, that's beautiful, because we ask audition advice all the time, and it's cool to hear it echoed, but you're also saying it sort of differently, because from your perspective, well, I mean, the other thing I was going to ask is about self-tapes, but it sounds like you answered that too, because like the equipment doesn't matter. You're saying the craft is first and foremost for you, and
absolutely.
That you will recognize it regardless of the bells and whistles.
Totally.
And so for the actor, similarly, in any audition, it's less about the packaging And it's more about like the craft in that moment. Did you give the best performance?
And to trust, and look, not everybody, everybody works differently. Every casting director works differently. But when you're auditioning for something for me and my associate and my assistant and my staff, like Ann Davison and Nick Petrovich, trust us. I'm going to be the first person to watch that audition. So if I think that you're going to need to retape it, I'm going to tell you.
Gotcha.
And so just trust the fact that it's just like, if you send it in as it is and you're worried that it's not good enough or whatever, take the onus off of yourself and put it on me, because I will tell you through your agent what needs to happen, if anything needs to happen. Otherwise, it's great.
It's great. It's like trust yourself and trust you.
Yeah. I'm on your team.
Advice.
It's just, I think the other thing about actors is that they don't understand that we want to cast the role.
Yes.
We also don't want to spend 3 weeks casting a part if we know we can cast it in 2 days.
Yeah. Totally.
So again, it's another way of looking at it, like shift the burden from yourself as the actor, because it's hard enough just to be an actor, to the other people,
And it's so cool to hear that, especially again, from your perspective, it's cool to hear actors should remember that you have a job to do. You'd like to do it as efficiently as possible. So like you want them to to be the right person for the job.
So it's just like, if we're, exactly. It's
not antagonistic at all.
No, well, certainly not with me.
Right. Totally.
Because I can just picture or hear the actor's head in their minds being like, well, that's not always the case, Cindy. And sometimes I'm working on material that's not always so good. And so,
sure.
I can totally hear it.
That's so true. Not every actor is auditioning for Maisel.
Right. But it's still an opportunity to learn something. So if it's a one-word, I don't know. If it's a one-word role on a horrible TV show, what can you learn from trying something by auditioning? What do you want to try out? What do you want to try and learn and see if it works or not? Because if it doesn't matter, then try something and get something from it for yourselves.
Well, I was going to say it's the worse the experience, the more you learn from it. But maybe that's not necessarily true.
I just think but you
can learn from everything.
Yeah, and I also think it's so hard to be an actor that you don't need bad experiences if it's not necessary, because they happen anyway, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The disappointment, of wanting something and then not getting it, and thinking that if you had done something differently, you could have changed the outcome. I have to say, it's just, is there any reality to that? Not 99%. It's like, no, it was totally out of your control.
Totally out of your control. Totally. I think actors listening to this, that's really, really good to hear. About Maisel specifically, is there something unique to casting Maisel? Because it seems to me like a unique show.
I love it. I mean, I love it so much, but we call it the two things. We call it the Palladino pace because of the rhythm.
Oh, cool.
Because the verbal skills, right, and the rhythm. And I think part of that is not just about the pace, but also knowing how they shoot the show, which is that they try to get a lot of things in one take,
really
in
ambitious
one
take.
Yeah. Like, so sometimes there's 15 pages that they're trying to do in one camera shot. And so if you're a person that is a day player on the show, part of what Ann and I are looking at is, is there the confidence to be able to do it? And if Rachel Brosnahan is doing the scene with you, do you have the confidence to just do the scene for 13 pages? Or are you going to be the person with 2 lines who kind of fumbled it and then we have to stop?
Right. And how do you identify that quality? Is there a quality that a person needs to have, or is it more about something you see in the audition?
I also think when you're casting actors, you're also casting people.
Yeah.
You're casting who they are as the qualities that they innately and naturally possess is also part of what you're casting sometimes. And so I think, I just think the more confident and secure you are with yourself and with your craft, the better you are.
Yeah. Like those qualities, and maybe this is common sense, but you said confidence. The qualities that a person should kind of have out of character or like off camera is a sense of collaboration. Maybe just somebody who is kind, not a jerk, and confidence.
Yeah, I think, good language skills are really good for the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, I think. And there's a reason why there are a lot of theater actors that are cast, on Maisel. It's the stamina, it's the
those long
comedic
shots.
It's the comedic timing. There are a lot of people from musicals. If you've noticed, there are a lot of people that have been in musicals that are on Maisel, and there's something about those two art forms that fill a need with each other.
Cool.
So the skill set, but that does not mean, that does not mean that somebody who's never done theater is never going to be on Maisel. So I don't want to say that either. It's hard to ever say one thing without it being a blanketed statement. It's like every single person in the world can audition for Maisel. Everybody has it.
Totally.
And whether or not you get it, that's up to other people.
And you want to be surprised. And it sounds like you have set it up in a way that you can be. I love hearing about actors who sweep in and someone that you would never have thought of casting fits the role perfectly. And it sounds like you are open to that phenomenon.
Totally. Best person for the job gets it,
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's it.
Well, and the other question, and I know this has been asked before too, but is there a misconception? Like and you've mentioned this a couple times with your very, very helpful advice. I really do think actors listening to this are going to be like, oh, light bulb moments. But is there something that they maybe have a misperception about, or an aspect of your job that that you wish more people understood?
Yeah, I think there's one thing that comes to mind, which is just like there's no such thing as a gatekeeper. There just isn't.
Okay.
I know everyone's going to be like, well, what does that mean? And I disagree. But again, I think it goes back to me, which is best person gets the job. And so it doesn't matter where you're from, what your background is, how I've come upon you. If you're good, if you're right, if the audition was good, you get the opportunity.
Totally. Are you allowed to answer the question, do you have a favorite actor?
I don't have favorite actors.
Oh, okay.
I don't have favorite actors. Anybody who's talented, I love.
Yeah.
And that means like, oh, well, so if I'm not talented, you don't love me? Or like, what's talent? So many things are talent,
Right.
I want to say one thing. I don't have an example right off the top of my head about, if I didn't think someone was right, but then they surprised me and they got it. But what I do have is an example of like, for the role of the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, for the role of May this year, it was the love interest to Joel. And I kept saying to Anne and in my office, and I'm just like, Stephanie Hsu is going to be perfect for this. I know it. I can feel it. I just know she's going to be great. Is she coming in? Is she coming in? When is she coming in? When is she auditioning? And then she got the part.
That's
she auditioned.
So cool.
We auditioned so many amazing, talented women for that part. But at the end of the day, Stephanie Hsu did get the part. And I just knew it. I just knew something about Stephanie was going to be perfect for it, and that Amy and Dan would respond. And they did.
And that's also, I'm such a fan of her also. Like,
she's great.
She's so amazing. And also someone who fits the world of Maisel. And that's more like has to do with like energy. Like that's why it's like hard to define what it is that in my mind makes her a good match, but she is.
Oh, and she just, enveloped all the qualities. She possessed all the qualities, even innately as a person.
Right.
Palladino
pace and like the theater sense of the big shot and everything. Yeah.
And the timing.
Yeah.
And then later on, I found out that she and Rachel Brosnahan went to college together. I had no idea. So that's is always interesting how that, falls into place and then you didn't know.
Right. And it's just like this idea that talent, what does talent mean? And it means a lot of different things. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, in your case, it's talents that depend on the role. It depends on everything you're saying about the dramaturgical side of things, which I find so cool. The conversations you've had with the director, with the creators, with the talking about the world, even the design of a show. That all comes down to like in the audition, this person's going to be a great match. This person's not going to be. And it has less to do with the talent level and more to do with the talents that fit the particular job.
Yes. And I think like, we give adjustments, we work with the actors and we give adjustments. So if we see something that is appropriate for the role and it's exciting and even if it's, we're just like, what's happening in this, in this scene? Like what is going on these lines or whatever. And sometimes I'm not even, it's just like, I would just, maybe I would tweak it this way, or maybe I would do this or whatever. And you give a note an actor, they're amazing.
Yeah. And it's true too, that it's in the adjustments. That's when you really see them in the role. It gives you 2 points of data as opposed to just the audition, right? Or just the tape?
Oh, I think like you get a lot of information from working with somebody and learning about them and the adjustment and what happens with that and all of that.
Because that's also when you can see their quote unquote off camera qualities.
Yeah, or just who they are as people, right? Like you get a sense, a glimpse of them.
Wonderful. This is so cool to hear about. We always ask for actors, we always ask like, what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self? Do you have a similar thing? Like, is there something that you wish you'd known at the beginning of your career?
Honestly, just be kind to yourself. It's gonna be okay. Yes. Just be kind to yourself because the world is hard enough and you don't need to do it to yourself.
Yes.
Just be kind.
That's so good to hear because that's just true of any profession, any walk of life. It's true.
Oh, it really is. It's just like, it's not hard to be nice. And in fact, it's so much harder to be generous when you don't have anything than when you do have anything. So it's just be kind.
Be kind to others and be kind to yourself.
Yourself. I mean, actors need to know that so much.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, we see you, we love you, see yourself and love yourself.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. This has been so nice. Are there any other words of wisdom, anything that actors listening to this should know?
No, I just admire you all so much.
That honestly I think that's really, really good to hear. Like you in the audition room are sitting there admiring that someone is...
It's incredible.
Talented.
It's what a gift.
Totally.
What a gift every day. What a gift.
I could never do it.
Me either. I could never do it. Never do it. Hats off.
Hats off. Exactly.
All right, Jack.
Well, Cindy, thank you so much. This is so lovely.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and break a leg at the Emmys, I guess.
It's all just really nice to be in the conversation.
Completely. And a strange year, of course. I mean, you will not be attending, I don't think, any events.
That's okay.
But that's okay.
We'll watch it from our home in our pajamas. Yay!
That's nice. That is nice. This episode of In the Envelope is brought to you by HBO's acclaimed drama Euphoria, which follows a group of high school students as they navigate love and friendships in a world of drugs, sex, trauma, and social media. Critics hail the series as downright gorgeous and truly remarkable. Season 1 is now nominated for 6 Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama Series for Zendaya. Consider Euphoria. Sharon Bialy and Sherry Thomas are celebrating a 20-year partnership at their award-winning casting company, Bialy Thomas and Associates. Sharon is known for casting Rudy, Point Break, and Mr. Holland's Opus, while Sherry got her start on the film Contact. Together, they've cast Broadway and Los Angeles theater, indie and blockbuster films, and dozens of TV hits, including Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, The Walking Dead, Barry, The Righteous Gemstones, The Twilight Zone, and The Act, and are nominated at the upcoming Emmy Awards for their work on Netflix's Dead to Me and Hulu's The Handmaid's Tale. Here are Sharon Bialy and Sherry Thomas. Sharon and Sherry, how are you guys? What's going on? How are you guys these days?
We're hot. We have our biggest heat wave in the history of California, but we're surviving.
Yeah, good. 2 kids at home that just started LAUSD yesterday. That's really fun.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
And started on a new project, and we're very happy to be working, but it is a challenge when everybody is working from their cell phones. And you actually learn where every agent's assistant is from, because their cell phone comes up and it says Florida, Philadelphia, all these places.
Totally.
So
yeah, that's so funny.
Challenge, but it feels good to have production starting back up, given the long break we've had.
Yeah, really tumultuous times. This interview would have been a completely different interview in winter, of course, and then in summer, and now production's slowly starting back up. Congratulations on your Emmy nominations, by the way.
Thank you.
Much deserved.
Thank you.
This episode of this podcast, we usually talk to actors. We're Backstage, of course. You know Backstage. You know Elyse Roth, who's interviewed you both. But this podcast is mostly dedicated to actors, and we wanted to take the opportunity to really do a deep dive on casting. And of course, I want to ask you guys both about specifically Handmaids and Dead to Me. But first, what are the broad strokes here? Can I ask each of you, like, what do you do in a day-to-day? And maybe like, what is your favorite part about casting? I mean, why casting? Who would like to go first?
This is Sharon. We're going to talk about day-to-day pre-COVID, okay? Because that's where the experience lies. And I think I probably can speak for Sherry on this. Our favorite part of casting is being in the room with actors. Gotcha. We chose this profession because we love actors and we love cinema and we love storytelling on television, theater, on the big screen. So the exciting part is when you get to be in the room with actors. And the other exciting part is when you read a script and you talk to the people who created the script and you start to come up with ideas and you flesh things out and you challenge yourself and you challenge them. And sometimes the worst idea turns out to be the best idea. And that's where the creativity comes in. And I think Sherry and I have a spectrum in our casting where we see people we've never met before, people whose work we admire, and then people whose work who are at a level where they may not be auditioning anymore that you can think of. So we kind of love to dip into each part of the spectrum.
Very cool. And Sherry, what about you?
Yeah. Everything Sharon just said.
Yes.
I think that, you definitely have to have a passion for it. I think there's a misconception that it is sitting, very, fancy in a room, really pretty all the time, not sweating, reading with actors all day, very fancy actors. And, that's a piece and a part of it, but it's very, very hard work. It's a craft. And I think that gets forgotten about. And when it gets to the point where, the stars of the show that necessarily weren't attached to the show prior to us coming on are interviewed, it typically is all about the producers and how that relationship got cultivated. But prior to that, it's likely that we had the relationship and was a very big part of that process. Our job is cultivating relationships with actors and really understanding the depth of their work and try again. I mean, there are actors that, have come in for us in the double digits, well into the double digits, and never booked anything with us.
Yeah.
But we keep trying because we believe, in who they are and in their talent. So it's a lot of administrative work. Sometimes it's casting director / producer.
Yeah.
We are producing quite a bit on a day-to-day, juggling schedules of actors. If there's somebody that we really, really want and they're not available, and we're like, well, what does that mean they're not available? I bet we can make this work. And we get in there if we feel they're the perfect person and we're passionate about it, and we try to, make it work.
Yeah. And you mentioned misconceptions. I do like asking, especially with casting directors, is there a one top misconception that maybe actors have about your jobs?
Yeah, I think sometimes they think that we really, some, not all, but I think that that we're so hard to get into. That why can't I just get an audition? Why can't I just get in there? And we're very open. We don't only see actors that have agents and managers. We go down many different avenues to find the right talent. It's all about the work. So it isn't about, the perfect headshot. It isn't about the perfect agent or manager. It's really about the work. And if the work is there and we see the work, that's what's going to inspire us to, bring you in and make you a part of our world, hopefully, if that work in the room is good.
And along with that misconception, I totally agree with Sherry, is I don't think actors realize how many people are being submitted for each role. So somebody says, I can never get into that office. Well, when you have one role and you're getting 1,200 submissions for one part, and Sherry and I, or whoever is working, we work in teams. So if it's The Handmaid's Tale, the team is Stacia, Kimmler, and Russell Scott, Sherry and I. If it's Dead to Me, it's Sherry, Russell,
Katie,
and Alyssa. So between the team, we're looking at everything, but with only so much time in a day, you do have to make choices. It's sort of like the editor. You have to edit out certain things, and it isn't like your favorites or who you like or who you met at a restaurant. It's really about looking at the work, looking at what's on the page, looking what's going to work if you only have 8 days to cast an episode.
Right. Yeah. How did each of you get involved in the first place in casting?
I moved to LA when I was 22 with $150 in my pocket, and I kind of stumbled into it. Cool. I didn't know anybody in LA. I'm from Massachusetts, and I knew that I belonged in the industry, and the easy thing would have been to go to New York, I guess. But that was just sort of too close. If it wasn't working out, I could always go home and, be a manager at the Gap. And I started volunteering for an organization, the Pediatric AIDS Foundation, helping to raise money, and it was for Mary Jo Slater. And in that office was Mary Jo Slater and Victoria Burrows. And Victoria Burrows, I understood the energy in the casting office. I got it, and I loved it. So I felt like it's being it's a part of the industry in terms of the performance part, but it's a little more tangible. And it's also a little bit more, coming from a retail background, that's a business, it's running a business also. And so she said, when you're done doing what you're doing and you want to intern, I was like, great. So I interned for her 2 days a week. And then my first job was the location casting assistant on the movie Contact. And I loved it. And then that led me to sending my resume to Sharon for a pilot that she was going to be doing. And the rest is history.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And we will be celebrating our anniversary in September of 20 years being part.
20 years.
Is it 20?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
That's really
awesome.
exciting.
It's been a great marriage.
Sharon married my husband and I.
Yeah.
Did you really?
I did.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I had no idea. That's so awesome. This is a real 20-year partnership. That's amazing.
Yeah.
20 years. Well, it was very strange. I was like, she was like, can't I just be a bridesmaid? And I was like, but that's not, no, it's not, that didn't feel right. And I said, would you ever do this? And she was like, yes, I'll get ordained. The Jewish woman will get ordained. And I said, I'll upgrade the package. So you get a parking placard.
Because she knows I've always want a parking pass.
You need the parking pass. Absolutely. Reason enough. Yeah. And Sharon, how did you originally get into casting?
I was so ahead of Sherry. I had $600 in my pocket when I came out. And I came via Minnesota. I went to school at the University of Minnesota, and I actually minored in theater and dance. And I had great fortune in my senior year of working at the Guthrie Theater for an entire summer. I just got into their program as an actor because the audition happened to have been all improv and dance, and that was my background.
Oh, cool.
And it was just amazingly inspiring, and I looked around and they were so talented, and I thought, I want to be in this business, but I better do something else because I'm not that
Not
good.
this. That is
so
interesting.
I came out to California, and I actually started in commercials, but I was a theater nerd as well because I grew up in New York and always went to the theater as a kid and snuck in. And
Cool.
I ended up bumping into Rick Pagano, who was the person who was doing theater at the Mark Taper. Sort of said we should work together. We're the two people who like theater. I gave him my card. He called me the next week and said, I'm going on my honeymoon. Somebody's renting my office. They're doing a movie. They need an assistant.
Wow.
Call you. So they called me, and I was at that point doing pretty well, being a commercial casting director. I lied about my experience and got a job. And the person called me and offered me $200 a week to work part-time. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I'm making money, da-da-da. And I hung up and I thought about it. And I thought, this is not the place for me because I didn't have the ability at that time to be creative. If they wanted a white male from 30 to 35, that was it. And my first job, they didn't fire me, but that's what they wanted. And I brought in Leslie Jordan. They wanted a good-looking white male. And I brought in Leslie Jordan, and he got his equity card and his SAG card. But
wow.
But she called. I called her back, and I said, "If you pay me $250, I'll work full time." And she said, "Okay." Okay. And I was the assistant on the movie Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet and Contact. Those are quite the two first big movies.
So it was a really both had a great first experience in terms of something that would affect our aesthetic and our point of view.
Yeah, and
also the work ethic too. It made it. I don't know about you, Sharon, but when you're working on movies like that, there's no messing around. Your work ethic has to be like on point, and I think that's one of the reason why Sharon and I have been so great together. Is our work ethic is exactly the same, and we're both like really passionate people, and that doesn't waver. So
it's funny. We're as different as can be. Everybody says that. I can't stay up late at night and that kind of thing. But a manager just said,
I guess I can.
A huge Stars manager said this to me, and it was a great compliment. She said, "You and Sherry have a moral center. And it's so obvious in the way you run your business and the way you treat actors, and everybody in town knows that your office, the people who work there, have a moral and ethical code to them and tell the truth." And hopefully that's one of the reasons why the good work is coming our way.
Very cool. That's so good to hear. That's so cool to hear. Especially considering, is the evolution towards TV, is that a big part of this like journey too? Because I consider you both, if you look at the resume recently, especially, it's mostly been TV. Is that where the industry has taken you guys, or where you wanted to be?
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to work for Sharon when she was looking for somebody was, Mr. Holland's Opus was one of my favorite movies, and Rudy. And so she was very cemented in film. But Sharon, you can speak to this, but when I met her, we were doing a pilot together in TV, and our lives were very different. I was like, get me to where I want to be. Like, get me. I want to, I want to work. I want to grow, and I want to be a casting director. I'm okay. I'm a casting associate, but I want to be a casting director. And so I think that she understood my passion and my energy for it, and embraced it, and wasn't turned off by it, afraid of it, like none of that. And so,
and then I said, and our next job is a play. And she said, a what?
I was like, she said, oh, I went to Sundance. And I was like, because she had gone to Sundance. I knew we were at this point working together, and she said, I'm going to go to Sundance. I said, okay, great. I'll be gone here's what we need to accomplish while I'm gone. Okay, great. And then she came back, she goes, I got us a job. And I was like, great. What movie? And she was like, we're going to do a play for the La Jolla Playhouse. And I was like, what? You went to Sundance and you came back with a play? But cool. I had never worked in that area, and that taught me so much. We were there for 5 years. She had already been there with Des. He left. And then when he went back, she went back, and I was with her. And it was like school, and I'm so grateful for it. And it was really, really hard work, but it was so illuminating, about text and direction and actors. And I just learned so much. I mean, I probably drove Sharon crazy, because all I would do was ask questions about, different theaters and things when you're going through a resume. But I think, and Sharon, I'm just going to, like, when we got a pilot soon after that. And then I was like, okay, let's do another one. And she was like, no. And I was like, good, let's do another one. Let's do another one. And so we did a few really, really good pieces of work together. And I think the real shift came when Breaking Bad came to us. And we both read the script and we're like, is this for real? Because this is like amazing. Wow. Okay. And we went and we met, and yeah.
Is that
in terms of like, also with television, as you can see in the past decade, all the great writers and filmmakers are all gravitating there. And of course, in the last year, television has expanded so much because of cable and so much different storytelling that really is where great work is. I'm not saying they don't make great movies, but the great movies that are being made are being shown on different cable stations, different media
platforms,
on the big screen, different platforms.
Totally. There's a blurring of the lines here for sure.
Yeah.
And do you guys consider, I wanted to ask about camera work versus stage work. Is there a difference? Is there a difference in terms of an actor who is mostly a theater person? Are they going to be considered for on camera work and vice versa? Mm-hmm. And what is the process of casting stage versus screen? Or is it just the same?
It's different, but we haven't been doing as much theater of late. And there is a difference in terms of what the actor has to do on camera and pulling things down and making it smaller and understand what the camera reads and that there's nobody in the back of the house. Mm-hmm. But if you look at our work, it's peppered with so many actors from the theater. Just looking at Breaking Bad with, just you can do a who's who of the theater world just from that alone. And the same with our other shows. But it's an adjustment, and sometimes it takes actors a while. And I think, to our credit, we have a certain patience with certain actors that we believe will get there. Sometimes it just takes a little while to make that adjustment from going so big to so small. And it takes producers or a showrunner who also believes in it, you know?
And I think that's the love and the passion of us being in the room. I think that there are a lot of, casting directors out there now in the community for one reason or another that really are only, and have been, not just pre-COVID, operating in tapes and self-tapes.
Right.
And for us, it's just, that's not the choice of where we want to start. If somebody is in town, we want to see them in the room. If they're not in town, then yes, they can self-tape if the timing isn't going to work. If we're, exploring actors and actresses from, all over the world, then of course that would be the option. But even then, we always will say, please let us know if you need a conversation before taping for context, to run it, to, it's casting director, and you can't direct if you're not with the person.
Ah, okay. That's the disadvantage of a tape, that you can't give immediate feedback.
Correct.
Now, having said that, because it's post-COVID, can I ask about the self-tape advice? Because, of course, I think listeners of this podcast, whether they are just starting out, I mean, some listeners of this podcast are curious about acting and just starting out, or whether they've done it a million times. Like, what are the number one things that actors should remember for a good self-tape?
Sound.
Okay.
Do not have the reader right next to the camera. And the reader doesn't need to try to get a job. Calm down.
I've never heard that. Okay.
Be there for your friend or whoever it is that you're reading with, and all you have to do is facilitate it.
Okay.
There has never been a time where we were like, oh my God, who's that reader? We've got to, try to cast them.
Never.
Yeah. Never.
And that is not the point. Yeah.
Right. And also make sure your eye line is correct. And, there are obvious things that this is a podcast, but right now I'm sitting in front of a bookshelf. You would never want to have that on your tape. You would want to have the wall blank behind you so no one is getting distracted and not having a window behind you. And the good thing about a self-tape is you can go watch it and do, a bunch of different takes until you see the take that you believe works. We often ask people when they self-tape to send 2 takes, their first instinct, and then the second one where they just do much less.
Okay.
So the biggest error that we see is actors, even experienced actors, just doing too much in the audition and forgetting that just pretend the camera's really close to you.
So never 1 take and never 3 takes. It should be 2.
No, I wouldn't say never.
Not never. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's probably best.
It's probably good to send more than 1. Yeah.
Cool. Now, what about your Emmy-nominated shows? Is there anything specific to Handmaid's Tale and Dead to me? I think of as 2 very tonal pieces. That tone is a very important part of populating the world. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, is that something that you guys think about, especially with like ongoing seasons? You must watch the show as it airs, right? Mm-hmm. And then, is that a part of it? Like considering who would fit into the world of this?
Yes, but I think it's also the character and how the character fits into the tone in the world. And then you're really sort of taking, the actor. I'll speak to Dead to Me, but, it's a comedy. Obviously, it's not a traditional comedy. But you also have Christina Applegate, who was very, very known for comedy. And you have Linda Cardellini, who was, I think, if you had to pick one or the other, I think she'd be known more for drama. Yeah. But both of them can do all of it. And within that, give it depth and make it compelling. So right there's the foundation. And then you've got to surround them with people that can't just go toe to toe with them, but maybe give them something to play off of. They shouldn't have to carry everything. So even in these one-line roles, these smaller parts, you have to make sure that they're good actors, that it fits into the tone, and that it's the right actor. I love the soul of the actor with the soul of the character, because I think sometimes that's really what it's about.
Okay. Yes.
Everything else is hair and eyes and short and tall, but cool. So often it's just that perfect match.
Oh, see, I love that. I love the idea of the souls. Like, it's less about the tone and the environment and more about the actor and the character, and not even necessarily, like you're saying, not even similarities, physical or otherwise. Yeah. It's about the soul. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And obviously The Handmaid's Tale is a very different tone than Dead to Me.
I was going to say.
I think your question, Jack, overall, do we look at the tone? Absolutely. We don't look at it because we're watching the show. We look at it from what's on the page and who you set in the original pilot, and what the actors have to do. So, when you're looking at something like Handmaid's Tale, you know that each character is very complicated. So to speak to what Sherry said, you want to hire a person who's complicated, an actor who's complicated to play a complicated role. You need to hire actors who can say so much with their eyes without moving, because 90% of the women we're casting are going to be in a red outfit with a cape
bonnet
and a bonnet. So where are they showing their emotion? All in their face. And tends to be, you can see what someone's thinking behind the eyes. So that's something that's incredibly important in that show. And we look for actors who are creative in their own right, so they can take what's on the page and add to it. If you look at like two of the roles that were recent, like Bradley Whitford, what he does with his character is just astounding.
Yes.
And the character motivated him because he felt it was such a complicated character that he could access places within himself that he had never done before.
Yeah.
Or you look at Chris Maloney, who was new this season,
oh my gosh,
doing something that he's not known for. So much of what he brought to it wasn't even on the page.
Yeah.
And the silent moments between he and Joseph Fiennes, it's just like magic.
And it does start with the page and goes from there. That's cool to hear. And my other question, and Bradley Whitford and I guess Chris Maloney, those are good examples of like, how much are you considering the actor's previous work? And if they're like known for something, if they're particularly famous for a role, how much is that playing into your decision process when it relates to like what the audience is going to bring by seeing Bradley Whitford on the screen? I have preconceptions, and then he's surprising me in this role, and that is a part of my viewing experience. Is that a part of the casting process?
It's something that you think about, but we're not bringing the actor in because they're famous, because you don't want to take people out of the story. So you have to have the trust and belief that after a short period of time, you as the audience member are going to buy into what he's doing with his character. And I think with Bradley, he'd done so many different roles, so much complex layers to what he does in each, from West Wing to Get Out. You had a certain amount of faith that he would, if he found something fascinating, he would do something fascinating with it.
Totally. Okay, cool.
And I think that we look at it different than an audience too. We do not, pigeonhole. We see them for who they are as the actor. We don't see the characters that they've played.
And would you say not pigeonholing is part of the mission or part of the job?
Yeah, I mean, we've been pigeonholed. So I think that, you really have to, it's anyone's game. We read a lot of people that typically probably wouldn't come in and read. But because we're always willing to try something different. And I think that we nicely have a reputation for that. And we're always sort of thinking outside that box.
I love that. And are there examples, if you're willing to reveal examples, like you mentioned Leslie Jordan, are there examples of really outside the box?
It was a really long time ago.
True. Is there someone who maybe surprised you, or you were happy to surprise the director or producer with a casting choice?
Well, I think there's so many instances where we were happy to surprise our producers with a casting.
Yeah,
sure.
I think when you roll the dice with someone who has never done something like that before, you're taking a chance. But I would say 9 times out of 10, the actor will say, "Oh my God, thank you for believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I mean, I think a recent exciting choice was Henry Winkler in Barry. For Cousineau. I don't, he had been laying low for a long time, and he had been a conversation on another show for something, and they said, he'll come in and read. And I was like, what? Henry Winkler will come in and read? That's crazy. And they said, yeah, he wants to work. He'll come in and read. And it wasn't the perfect fit, so the producers didn't, respond in that way. But when we went to meet with Alec and Bill, and I said, there's one way to go. How about, what if it's like Henry Winkler? And the whole room just got really quiet, and they were like, yeah. Wow, that is, and then that starts the dialogue.
Yes.
And then you kind of just keep massaging it, and he'll come in and read. And they were like, what? I said, yeah, he'll come in and read. And so he did. And then there you go. So that was, I think, exciting. It's just sometimes having to bend an ear.
Bend an ear. It's about imagination. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the question, we always hear actors, how do I get in the room? How do I get in the room? And I always say, do good work and we'll find you. Like with regards to Handmaid's Tale, yes, Yvonne Strahovski had a body of work in television. However, I had just seen her in a play on Broadway.
Yes.
And I actually didn't like the play, but I loved her performance. I was so impressed with her because I thought she went so beyond the beauty that she is.
Yeah.
And that was fun to have her come in. And same thing, just as a note to actors, when you get to a certain place, when you want to do good work, you go in and read. And she was in a position where she should have been offer only, but she said, I'm going to fight for this.
Right.
I want to do this kind of work. So that was an exciting thing to present to our producers and everybody who might have just thought of her from her other 2 TV shows.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And when you say go do good work, that's in any medium, that's theater, but also you guys go to showcases and comedy and improv as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Local stuff. And then I assume my other question is, how much TV or how much media are you watching? It must be a lot.
A lot. But we also have a wonderful staff. There's 10 of us, and not any one person now can see everything.
No.
But usually within our staff, and we're very collaborative with everybody. Sometimes we go, we can't think of someone. Everybody give us 3 names, and somebody will have seen something.
Cool.
Or if you haven't seen it, and somebody tells you, "Oh, go watch Sarah Cooper. She does these great impressions." You'll go, "You haven't seen that on YouTube. You just go watch it."
Yeah, cool. TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, whatever it is. Yeah, very cool. This is I wanted to get my Henry Winkler mug because I have it right over there. I have Henry Winkler as Gene Cousineau. It's a mug. Anyway, this is so lovely. Thank you guys so much. Do you have any parting words of wisdom for listeners of this podcast who want to know how to live a life in the arts?
Live the life in the arts and make it about the work. So if you want to be an actor, act. You don't have to, if you want to be famous and you want endorsements and you want then be a YouTuber or a, reality TV show star. If you want to be an actor, it doesn't matter how long it takes. If you want to be a musician, a singer, it doesn't matter how long it takes because it's a part of who you are. It's a piece and it's there. Yeah. And it's, Sharon and I both started out performing and learned quickly, and thank God that, what, that's not the piece of this puzzle for us. We belong somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so we did it. And, but if you, in terms of acting, I'll just speak to that. If you want to be an actor, go act.
Excellent.
Go to CVS and ask for your prescription with an accent. I don't, create a character.
Totally.
Yeah. If you're listening to the podcast, you're already doing something to educate yourself further. And I think actors have to continue to educate themselves all through their career. They never stop working at it. I remember Robert Patrick, who's just a great actor. He works with his coach every Sunday before he goes to the set on Monday.
Oh, okay.
He hasn't stopped. So when he shows up on a set and he is ready to go, everybody around him is like, "Whoa, shit," But I think you need a really strong and dedicated work ethic. Yeah. So because it is a difficult career and there is a lot of rejection and people have to give you permission to do the craft. But I think to what Sherry was said, there's so many times you can play, and that's what great acting is. In practice, do your accent at Starbucks.
Yeah, that's great. And I love this idea that it's not if you're in it to reach a point. I mean, it's about the journey and not the destination thing of you can act now, currently, in this moment, and I'm not an actor until I become famous. That's the wrong thinking.
Correct.
Yeah.
I also think that listen to this podcast is my favorite piece of advice I've heard on this podcast.
Well, I listen to some podcasts, with the writers of our shows, and I've learned so much about their thinking going into the show because we don't be in the writer's room. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool too. Yeah. And there's so much of that content out there too, for sure. Wonderful. Okay, gosh, this is so great. I can't wait to write this up and release it into the world. Thank you both so much for joining us. And at the same time, technology, the wonders of technology never cease to amaze me.
I know, it's crazy.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. This was so lovely.
Thank you.
In the Envelope is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City, and Soundbox LA, Mark Grau's Studios, and Buzzy's in Los Angeles. Thanks as always to our producer extraordinaire, Jamie Muffett, and to the team at Backstage, Samantha Sherlock, Mark Stinson, Caitlin Watkins, and of course, Casey Howe. Visit Backstage.com, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage by using the code ENVELOPE at checkout for a free trial. That's right, 100% free. For more exclusive content, join us on Facebook and Twitter at In the Envelope, and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Who would you like us to interview next? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another glimpse in the envelope.